Hi everyone, and welcome to our latest webinar, 4 recession-proof growth strategies to maximize your bounce back. Now, the current economic climate has forced us all to make major changes in how we operate our businesses, and many of the norms we've taken for granted have been completely turned upside down. The tried and tested methods used to increase market share are increasingly being called into question. So, as always, I focus on organic sales growth through new or existing customers, great customer service, excellent experience, and smart marketing efforts will always provide a long-term stable basis to increase market share. However, with something as apocalyptic, you might say, as COVID-19 and the resulting difficult economic conditions that are predicted, the journey is probably going to be too slow, and you could end up missing opportunities elsewhere. So, as in all crises, savvy businesses are going to have a variety of options at their disposal to gain market share quickly in any environment, in any industry. These options can involve a little bit of risk, bold decision making certainly, and obviously impeccable timing. But those that get that mix right will reap some significant rewards. So at Plimsoll, we've identified 4 main strategies for increasing sales and market share, even amid the global pandemic and the resulting economic crisis. Now, the Plimsoll analysis can help you when executing any of these 4 strategies, and our 30 years of experience working with thousands and thousands of businesses to monitor and measure the key elements of the performance has been it's seen success time and again. So, strategy 1 is growing instantly through acquisition. Now, the fastest way to increase your market share is to acquire a competitor and add it to your portfolio. Now, obviously, there are several sub-strategies to explore within that. Do you buy a competitor that's in distress? Buy a bargain. Do you buy local, national, or even international? Do you diversify into new markets? All of these options, regardless of your strategic thinking with acquisitions, require solid intelligence, really. Whatever type of acquisition you make, you're buying in a new customer base, a new revenue stream, and it's added pretty instantly to your portfolio. Of course, you also take on board any legacy issues with the acquired business. So it's fundamentally important to understand the ins and outs of what makes a prospect most attractive. And you've got to ask yourself 2 or 3 really pertinent questions. What's the current financial health of the business you're looking at, and how would that affect your existing business when you take them over? Could you fold the company into your current operations, or do you need to take on their existing overheads? And then finally, how stable is that business, and what change would acquiring it make to your market share? So our tip would be to be exhaustive in your search for the best types of acquisition that suit your sort of mid-term strategic aims. Once you know the type of target you're interested in, we'd suggest research each prospect to determine a few key bits, really. The financial health, turnover, staffing, and their long-term trends. Then analyze how this would impact your own financial health and your market share before making a decision. Obviously, an acquisition's got to be worth making. It's got to add enough to your bottom line and to your expansion plans for it really to be worth it. And at Plimsoll, we can help reduce that long process down to literally mere minutes. So, with that in mind, where are we likely to see increased acquisition activity over the coming weeks, months, and next couple of years? Now, based on our analysis of the latest data, we forecast 5 particular sectors where we think there's going to be an increase in M&A activity over the next while. First one's the beauty sector, specifically customer-facing markets, thinking salons and spas, those sorts of areas. Then the furniture sector, now particularly in the decor and the accessories market, such as fine arts, antiques, and so on. Then the fashion sector. Now, it was interesting, all niches within the accessories part of the fashion market have a high proportion of companies that are exposed to acquisition. Move on then, the agri sector, agriculture, livestock farming in particular, stands out as having lots of companies that are ripe for takeover. And then finally, food. Now, food was an interesting one. By some distance, seafood was out there as the part of the food market with by far the most acquisition opportunities. Okay, then we'll move on to strategy 2, which is gaining customers when a competitor fails. Now, that's pretty sad to say. The unfortunate reality is that not all businesses are going to survive the current crisis. In fact, in highly saturated markets, it's actually going to be necessary for some companies to fail to make room for the rest to survive and thrive, really. Now, by default, those customers are going to have to find somewhere else to take their business. And you've got to be sure to reach them first. There are a few things to consider. That being said, we would advise people to look and see which of your competitors, which of your rivals are already in danger, and how quickly might they disappear. Are their customers financially stable, or are they too heading for trouble? And then finally, who are the decision makers? What are the drivers behind each of those businesses? Now, monitoring your competitors on a regular basis will ensure you don't get caught out by a sudden change in your competitive landscape. You won't get caught out by a competitor you thought was, tip-top condition suddenly failing. Now, you should also always maintain a complete list of similar companies as alternatives to your current clients. Research these companies as though they're already in your business, as they're already current customers. So you understand their needs, you understand their pressure points, and you can target them quickly if the need arises, if a competitor does go by the wayside. Now, at Plimsoll, we can provide instant financial health assessments on any grouping of companies, be that competitors, new customers, or even suppliers. Now, based on our analysis of the latest data, we've highlighted the sectors of the economy and the markets within them with the highest proportion of companies that are sadly struggling, really. First one is the drinks sector. Wine and cider, believe it or not, being the industries with the highest number of companies with a low financial rating. Then we move on to the leisure sector, particularly the sports part of the leisure sector. Thinking football centres and trampoline parks are both struggling with a high percentage of companies in financial difficulty. The next one's not really surprising, the hospitality sector, particularly around accommodation though, specifically around accommodation, thinking hotels, campsites, cottage hire, those sort of areas. Obviously high capital, very capital intensive, but yeah, really struggling at the moment. Then, perhaps a little bit surprising, the energy sector, in particular renewables as well. Solar farm operators and onshore wind farms had quite a high level of companies that were struggling financially. And then, last but not least, the retail sector. Obviously been very hard hit over the last 6 months. Retail parks and shopping centres in particular, very much, very financially weak. Only got to look at Into for an example of just how battered that particular sector has been. So then we move on to strategy 3, which is to look to diversify what you do. If the pandemic's taught us anything, it's that companies are changing the way that they generate revenue. The examples across the board, really. New ways of working are rendering a lot of support industries completely obsolete. That said, in their place, new ones are cropping up all the time. I don't go after, it goes without saying, the markets just seem completely recession-proof. So if you're looking to increase your revenue, but you can't see a route to growth in your current market, why not consider expanding into peripheral markets? Could you even repurpose all or part of your business to service completely different markets that are still operational and offering great returns? But things to consider before you sort of go down that strategic route is, what related markets can you easily expand into? Which industries are you set up to serve already? Then ask yourself, could you pivot your business to service different higher growth markets? Once you've decided those things, it's then a question of how. Do you acquire a company in a different market, or do you start a business from scratch? And then, as you're doing those research, you're doing competitor research in these new potential markets, who are the best companies within those markets already? Who are the best customers that they serve as well? Now, we recommend to all our clients to find out which related markets are still thriving and present the best opportunities for growth. There's no point in expanding into a market that's equally as depressed as the one that you're serving now. So also determine if the competitive landscape gives an opportunity to disrupt by diversifying your offering. And again, expanding into markets that are heavily saturated is probably not the best thing to be doing in the current climate. If the markets you've served remain depressed, though, you've got to look at what else your business can do and what markets you could serve. That's just critical. And we can help you at Plimsoll. We can help you better understand the markets and the key companies within them and the potential before you enter them. So based on our latest analysis of the latest data, we've picked out 5 sectors with the strongest growth in the UK economy. The first is the glass sector, particularly the sort of specialist areas of the sector. Fire-resistant glass, toughened glass, particularly high growth. The scientific sector, particularly around the equipment area, very, very high growth. Clean room providers, autoclave companies, very, very expansive at the moment. The beverage sector, no surprise, particularly high growth, especially around alcohol. Obviously, I don't think it's a great surprise to anyone to hear that gin is it is the fastest growing part of the drinks market. The energy sector, a bit contradictory to what we're talking about financial strength, but continues to grow. Despite having a high number of financially stretched companies, both solar and wind still are enjoying rapid growth as obviously we move away from a fossil fuel economy. And then finally, the landscaping and the gardening sector. These producing lots of high growth sectors, particularly online retailers, particularly around ornamental producers, all enjoying high double-digit growth. So then we'll move on to strategy 4, which is looking at what the best in your current markets are doing. If you find yourself struggling while others are powering ahead, it's a little bit tongue-in-cheek when I say this, but if you can't beat them, join them. Learning what the best are doing in your market is imperative. In all markets there are winners and losers, and looking at what the winners are doing, identifying them first, and then finding out what they're doing your own research is imperative. What growth have they achieved in the last year? How have they structured the finances to deliver a profitable return? And how have they responded to current economic conditions? And which customers do they serve? What products do they do? All of that is secondary analysis, but you've got to identify who the winners are in your market. Now, if you combine our analysis of competitors that get it right and do your own external research, you really can find out how people are achieving outstanding results. It's better and it's always better to follow the successful out of a crisis than stand still and hope the solution presents itself, because clearly it won't. And at Plimsoll, we can alert you to those pockets of exceptional performance in the market almost instantly. So based on our latest analysis, we've highlighted the following sectors having the highest proportion of very strong, financially strong companies. Again, the scientific sector, and again, the equipment area within that are all strong industries. The ones that particularly stand out: fume cupboard makers, water monitoring, HV monitoring, are industries with real high percentage of companies with strong financial strength. The heating and ventilation, air conditioning sector, particularly those around installation, are particularly strong. Now, boiler and air conditioning installation and maintenance are all strong sectors, markets within that sector. The chemical sector, especially around painting and coating, are particularly strong. The two that stood out were automotive and marine coatings. They were real standout industries. The electrical sector has a high proportion of strong companies, especially around the installation service. So aerial installation, lighting installation, protection, those sorts of areas were all very strong. And then finally, construction. Again, sees most of its strength coming particularly from the contractor area of the sector. Brickwork contractors, tiling specialists, concrete contractors were all really strong. So those are our 4 recession-proof strategies. Some companies will be able to trade their way to growth despite the looming recession, but it will be incredibly difficult. So we've discussed a few examples there of industries with strong growth prospects, and industries and sectors that are really rewarding the companies who are in it. But how does your industry fare? How does your company stack up within its main industries? So I'd like to show you a quick video of how we can help you to answer these questions and bounce back quickly over the coming months. So thanks, everyone. Thank you for attending this free webinar. We'll be sending out a free white paper, the 4 ways to increase your market share. That'll be coming over in the next couple of minutes. So check your inboxes. If you've not had that in a couple of minutes, just let us know and we'll get that fired across to you. But yeah, I'll just summarize by saying we can help any company in any industry, be that abattoirs all the way through to yarn supplies. Doesn't really matter what you do. But if you'd like to discuss any element of today's presentation or find out how Plimsoll can help you make more sense of the growth strategy and your options for growth, just give us a call, 01642 626 400, or email inquiries@Plimsoll. We're happy to help. Now, we're going to take a few questions now via the live chat. So if you want to stick around and ask us anything in a public forum, we're happy to help. But if not, thanks for attending and the best of luck.